Hello again, it's me Eli, aka Slim, here with another video. This time, I'm editing the line work for this Marie jumping out of a cake art that I did. It's about a 5-minute video, so I should be able to get 5 tips in. Now, I originally started making this piece because I want to celebrate having like 500 followers on Instagram, but I decided to make a video about it because I started this traditionally and then I brought it in digitally to digitally enhance it. When you're scanning, make sure you scan with high contrast and brightness all the way up. Contrast all the way up, brightness all the way up. That way you get very nice black lines, and it hides a lot of the little small artifacts from like your pencil work or your, if you're using non-photo blue, it hides all those things a little bit better. So that's the first tip. Next tip is kind of do what I'm doing here, which is going in very carefully and erasing and removing little dust, pencil marks. Sometimes you get like hairs on the scan. It can be a mess. I think it's important to make sure that you correct any errors or mistakes, any lines that you don't want to see. And sometimes I even use it to touch up like the edges of lines. As you can see, like there's some lines that I don't like how they end or they're not sharp enough. So I kind of go in and straighten those lines up and sharpen them. Don't be afraid to make changes. Like, for example, if your wife looks at your art and tells you that swimsuits don't work like that, that's not how boobs would sit in the swimsuit. Don't be afraid to go in there, move things around, change them to make them a little bit more accurate to the new information you gathered. I mean, that's the beauty of digital art, is that it makes editing and fixing things significantly easier, smoother. So don't be afraid to go in and make small changes to make it, maybe things you didn't notice the first time or weren't paying attention to. Now that you have a second chance at it, I say make sure you go in there and digitally fix things up as needed. My next tip, well, just tie into that. When I'm making changes, what I always use is copy, I paste onto a new layer, and then I transform, Control T. I'm using Clip Studio Paint, so there's a couple shortcuts on this one. But just make sure you're using the information that you already have from the inks, from the scan that you scanned in, and duplicate that information. Although, as I said, I use a lot of mixed media. I usually start traditionally and then bring it in digitally. It's very important to kind of save as much of the traditional work as you can. Just completely redrawing it all again, sometimes it just looks different. It just doesn't look like it all belongs together. So try to use as much of the original piece or as much of the original information as you can. That always helps. Also, last tip, make sure you close off areas. For example, this piece I do plan on coloring. Sorry, that will be in the next video. But I do plan on coloring it. And when I'm putting down flats, I always try to use the paint bucket to start off to get kind of the base colors down. And it has mixed effects if the areas aren't sealed off. So for example, don't leave any gaps in the lines. Make sure that, like, say, their head, face, their arms, they all have solid defined lines and they're completed. If you leave any gaps or holes, then when you try to paint bucket later, it'll just fall. The paint bucket will leave that hole and fill up an entire area that you don't need, and that just adds extra work. Admittedly, there are workarounds for doing that when you're actually coloring it. You can always seal them off with color, but I found it's a little bit easier to do it while you're doing the lines and the inks. But I'd say it just depends on your style. Make sure that you seal off areas. Try to think ahead to minimize back and forth. You got to think about the finished product rather than just the part you're working on. So although it may look fine, if you don't finish lines or seal them off, it adds complication later on. So those are my 5 tips for ink line work digitally. Hopefully that helps. I'll be back soon with a video on how to put down flats. Until then, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.